probably didn't. I only made about 15 copies.
Wexaukee Amateur Radio Club meeting, October 3rd, 2024.
I heard that.
I probably should have been printed more. I just
All right, let's get started.
yeah. I put the wrong date on it anyway, so.
We are going to do introductions because we've got some new faces. We also got some old faces, but
Really old.
we won't talk about those. And let's start with Mike. Just go around the table and you know the drill.
Hello everyone, I'm Mike, KFA VCR. I've been on for a little bit, so you guys have probably, I know I've talked to a few of you. I'm a new technician as of May.
Neil, WANPC.
Tom, WB8WIV Cadillac.
Steve, M8KRN, Roscoe.
Who are you, Bob?
Oh, my turn? Bob, 108BOB. I'm living here in Cadillac.
Rich, K8MFC, Cadillac.
Ken, WA8VES, Cadillac.
Ursula, KC8HGU, Cadillac.
Dave, WD8LBZ, Northwest corner of Clare County.
Steve, WQ8T, sometimes Cadillac, sometimes downstate.
Well, we're glad you're in Cadillac tonight. All right, Jeff.
My name JAP, Jeff in beautiful Cadillac, Michigan.
NADDA, 10 Cadillac.
Dallas, KC8KCW, also in Cadillac.
Bruce, KX4AZ. I bounce between Leroy and Tustin this time of the year.
And Athens, Georgia.
Well, this time of the year. Next month I'll be in Georgia.
All right, all right.
I'm Jordan, I'm brand new. I'm still thinking about studying.
Jordan was one of the many throngs that came out to hear me speak at the library.
Well, lucky him.
Yeah, there were three.
Oh, good deal.
But we got 1 out of 3 to come to the meeting.
Amen,
That's not
sir.
bad. All right. Over here.
Jack, 8HFX, Cadillac, part-time, Arizona, part-time.
Joe, NAPMF, Lake City.
Parker Motor Freight.
Did we miss it? Got everybody on this side?
No.
Jack White.
Debbie,
Oh, Debbie.
Debbie, KK7, TPL, Cadillac, and Arizona.
Lee, KD8UVN, Cadillac.
Brandy, KC8 TXS, Cadillac.
Van, WA8LKV, Tustin.
And the lovely ladies back here.
Sandy, Adams.
I'm Leah.
And Leah belongs to, I belong to her.
There you go.
Be careful. All right, well, we're called to order. And let's see if we can find out where the minutes are. Brandy, you're up.
The minutes of the September meeting, as you can see, I dated it wrong. I will fix that. Meeting was called to order at 6:30 p.m. The minutes were read by Lynn in my absence. Keith motion for approval. Tom seconded. Minutes were approved. Financials were read by Lee. Jeff motion for approval, and Gordy seconded. Financials were approved. We have a list of activities coming up that they went over for the president's report. Went over Wings and Wheels, got net controls, and saw a rather cool, I heard, presentation on Whisper. Meeting was adjourned at 7:30. Thank you, Ken. I apologize. I will fix your call.
Motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Passed again. Way to go, Brandy.
Yay!
Let's see where we are on money. Where are we on money? Come on up here, Lee. Probably wanna
As of
start with
tonight, it's
this
starting
one.
to grow.
Good. You want this one here for a while?
Sure. Yeah, hi. Hey, boy, what a group tonight. This is great. So anyway, oh, by the way, before I forget it, 2 of us have bought Whispers. Hey. Ken's the other one. We ordered together to save freight. Okay, Bob, we paid him the 7th or the 8th? Phone bill.
I'll make sure that
AA storage.
What does it
Thanks.
No, thank you. $40, that didn't go up. We pay it annually.
Jeff,
Wings and
what dates
Wheels,
changed? What needs changed?
Fall get together we have October 8th.
8th?
It doesn't look right, $2.
I didn't check.
Larry,
I just
joint
copied and
paid
pasted
is,
it.
Thank you.
Obviously, there's a
I
lot
just
of
have to make
changes.
arrangements for
and
my
the 50/50, we brought in $55, we donated. So. And the next page.
Yeah. So you get under things to figure this out here.
I guess that one's for you.
I guess.
And we gotta do this.
This is a two-man job.
There you go.
Okay. All right, this is a summary. We got dues of $15 under the income, $55 for the 50/50, $2 for coax or whatever, $72 total. And then expense, renting of the storage is $540, utilities $23.25. Total expenses of $563.25, and so we ended up with an ending balance of $2,639 and 64 cents, and that equals bank statement, so, or what's online, so that's a good thing. Any questions? And I appreciate everybody that's paid their dues tonight. We paid, a lot of dues were paid last year in October, I noticed, so, just give you a thank you. I'll be around if anybody else wants to, during the break, if anyone else wants to take that.
We have a motion to approve the financial report. Herschel, second?
Second.
Somebody hollered second. Who was it? All right, Dave. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great job, Lee. Thank you for your
Oh, here's a
work.
tough one.
Yeah.
Before I get too far, who motioned and second for the minutes? I was starting the recording
Dave
with you,
was
so I
the
didn't
second.
forget. Who motioned
Oh,
for?
Herschel. Herschel was first.
No, on the minutes. It was Keith.
Oh, the minutes, okay.
Thank you.
Not a whole lot to report. Some stuff that you might want to buy. The estate of Don N8DE from the Big Rapids area. He's got 3 60-foot towers. Well, he doesn't because he's gone. But his estate has 3 60-foot towers, 3 vertical antennas, 1 3-element 20-meter beam. If you're interested, there's the contact information. I think Bruce is the president of the Big Rapids Club. And Brad, WAQPO, has an ICOM 7300 for $750. The ASU FT991, both of those are great rigs, as is the amplifier. There's his contact information. Neil is over here ready to take your money tonight for his LDGZ 11 Pro 2 auto tuner, right? Okay. Also, 175. Also, there's a special event. I was hoping Gordy could fill us in a little more of the details. Air Force Mars is celebrating 75 years. I know some of you guys do special events and collect their certificates, which they offer. There's the source you can go to get the information, the frequencies and times and so forth. Our November meeting program is Computer Nostalgia. Who do you think's going to do that? Brandy? Going to bring a few boat anchors in and stuff?
I'll try.
All right. November meeting program. Well, I already did that. We also nominate officers. I need someone to present a program for December. Also, we'll do the election of officers. And
Wasn't Gordy going to do it in December?
no,
No?
here it is, folks. The grand prize for January. You've got time to start building something really ugly. All right? If it's not ugly, you're probably not going to win. And it even should work. So, the Ugly Project Contest, which last year we had a record number of entries, I'd like to go beyond that. So you've got time to build something. All right, and it can be an antenna, it can be a kit, whatever. So let's all do it. And then also sign up for our fall dinner. Pass it around if you can make it. Sign up for your name and some idea if you're bringing somebody, a guest or guests. And that, there's some confusion. It's Tuesday, October 8th. I think in the minutes it said October 7th. It's Tuesday, October 8th at Berkey's. We always have a good time. We're a club who likes to eat.
Time?
6 o'clock. Okay, club activities. You see them on your list. Kids Talk to Santa, Tuesday, December 24. Start thinking about volunteering. It's a lot of fun. It's out at the airport. Now we need to do net controls. So let me back up here. Hold on. All right. Can we get a volunteer for next Thursday night, October 10th?
You want to try to get the whole line or not?
Yeah, let's do the whole line. October 10, November 14, December 12. Who wants the date?
I'll take the 17th, 21, and 20, and 19th, the second week
Okay,
back.
Brandy is taking the second line. We have a volunteer for the third line, 24, 28, 26.
I could do that, I think.
Okay, put you down. I'll take the top line unless, Tom, you want to split it with me?
Yeah, but I can, I'll tell you what, you take 2 and I'll take the 31st.
Okay, so I'll take the top line,
Yeah,
okay?
what do you want? You want the 10th and the 14th, or do you,
I'll take the 10th and the 14th.
Okay.
You take the 12th
yep,
and the 31st.
okay, no, it's the 14th, the 10th, you're gonna take the 10th, the 14th, I'll take, yeah, the 12th, I got it.
All right, good, thank you.
Yep,
Old business, and maybe Bob, you can fill in. I was going to ask Gordy to give an update on the new repeater. What do we know?
What do I know? He's programming it.
Okay.
We hope to have it installed before November,
Oh, good. And you
before
had
bad
mentioned,
weather.
you had mentioned something about auto patch, and your decision was
No,
it's not going to have an auto patch.
no.
So,
It will have auto patch capability, but that's strictly for us to control. Who gets this next?
maybe try behind you. Okay, one thing I missed is open mic for any comments anybody has about anything. Tim?
Gordy wanted me to mention for the club newsletter that there's open space for any topics that anybody would like to read about, learn about, whatever. So he wanted me to put a plug in so everybody could pass on their request to him and it'd make his day.
Great, yeah, he's doing a great, he and Cheryl are doing a great job. I also know that he's still looking for a shack of the month. So get your cell phones out, take a picture of your shack, and shoot it to Wexaukee ARC News. I think that's it. Okay? Anybody have any old or new business we need to address? One thing I also wanted to mention is, and Lee already did, the actual deadline for dues is the end of the year, December 31. You're welcome to pay early, a lot of us do. So now we're going to take a short break for you to pay your dues, grab some coffee, and get caught up with each other, buy a ticket for a 50-50. So we'll take about a 5-10 minute break and then we'll get on with our program.
And I'm not sure what order that things.
All right, let's get ready to get moving. Before our program gets started, I was reading an article that somehow came through to me about what makes a good radio club. And just about all the things they list, we do. But one of them that I want to just highlight tonight, that club members help each other. And this is a club that's amazing that way. I listen a lot on the repeater, and I hear somebody say, well, I'm having problems with FT8. Someone else says, well, I'll be right over. We've got people who say, my rig quit, and somebody says, well, I've got an extra one, I'll loan it to you. And that just happens across the board. That's unusual, and I really appreciate that. I've been the beneficiary of it, and sometimes I'll even go and supervise a work project, because, you know, I don't want to get my hands dirty or anything like that. So I'm doing a little of that too. Keep it up. It really is important for newer members, and not to single Jordan out, but we're going to have people coming in that want to learn how to become a ham, and you're their teachers, so keep it up. Now, Roy couldn't be here tonight.
Thank you.
And if you're here because you want to learn more about fox hunting, you'll have to wait. He has had a hellacious fall schedule. He was sent to do forest fire work out west. I think he said for 14 days he worked 18-hour days straight. So he's kind of burnt out. But Mike's going to come and talk to us a little bit about myths of SWR. Now, I don't want to single you out, Bob, but I'm going to. I'm one of those guys that if one of my antennas goes from 1.1 to 1 to 1.5 to 1, it just bugs me, and I just keep working till I get it down. I just work at it. And I say that, and Bob will say, it doesn't make any difference.
It doesn't.
And Bob's going to be our program tonight. No, but Mike is. And if I can find him, he's in here somewhere.
Somebody went out, somebody, oh.
Perfect SWR. Way too many hands have made a relentless pursuit of having one-to-one SWR, no matter what the cost. Let's look at what SWR is and debunk some of the myths and misinformation surrounding it. Welcome back to the DX Engineering Channel. I'm Michael K.I. Adolf. I've had the privilege of being in this hobby for over 44 years. In all that time, I've heard way too many hands refer to flat SWR or perfect SWR. But is there even such a thing, and how much does it really matter? Now, before we dig into this, let me explain that my goal today is to give you an overall view of what SWR is, and hopefully a better understanding of how it impacts your antenna system, without getting too deep into the math and science that is way beyond the scope of this video. So, what is SWR? SWR is probably one of the most widely used numbers in ham radio today. When you key your transmitter, RF voltage travels down the feed lines of the antenna. This is called a forward wave. In most cases, part of the voltage is reflected at the antenna and travels back down the feed line to the transmitter. Think of it as an echo. SWR is a measurement of what happens between the forward and reverse voltage waveforms and how they compare in size. SWR, or standing wave ratio, or VSWR, or voltage standing wave ratio, are the same thing. The only difference is how they're measured. SWR is the ratio between two different impedances. For example, if the system impedance is 50 ohm and the load impedance is 100 ohms, then the SWR is 100 divided by 50, or 2, and we write this as 2 to 1. If the load impedance is 25 ohms, we swap the two numbers, and the SWR is 50 divided by 25 equals 2, or again, 2 to 1. VSWR is the ratio of the maximum to minimum voltage on the transmission line, and is more practical to measure as it measures RF by detecting voltage rather than RF current. Most SWR meters measure the voltage and then convert it to power. One other way this can be shown is as return loss. Return loss is the difference in dB between the forward and reflected power. In other words, forward minus reflected power equals return loss. Ideally, we want return loss to be a larger value. The larger the return loss, the less reflected power. Return loss will always be a positive number. Along with this, it's important to understand what impedance is. Impedance is composed of a real resistive part and an imaginary reactive part. Impedance is a complex value that consists of resistance, which does not change by frequency, and reactance, which does change by frequency. Reactance can be further broken down into two parts, a capacitive part and an inductive part. Impedance varies by frequency, but how much really depends on the load. For example, a dummy load is a resistive load which covers a wide frequency range, while an antenna typically will have an impedance that changes with frequency.
Is that a nice antenna?
Antennas typically only work under specific frequency ranges. Also, the impedance of an antenna is impacted by its environment. Ground conditions and other things near the antenna will impact its impedance. To understand what SWR is, let's look at this example. A typical ham station has a source or transceiver and a load and an antenna. If we assume that the source and the load are both 50 ohms, then there's maximum power transfer and all of our power is radiated, or in the case of a dummy load, absorbed by the load. That's assuming there's no feed line loss. But what happens if there's a mismatch between the source and the load? In this case, let's say that the load is 75 ohms. Since there's a mismatch, part of the power is reflected back to the source. With some quick math, we can divide 75 ohms by 50 ohms, and we'll show that our SWR is now 1.5 to 1. So how much power is actually reflected to the source? If we look at this table, we can see that 4% of our power is reflected. For 100 watts forward power, that's only 4 watts reflected. Not bad. If we increase our impedance of our load to 100 ohms, that would give us an SWR of 100 ohms divided by 50 ohms equal 2 to 1. Looking at our table again, we can see that 11% or 11 watts is reflected. Still, not terrible. But we all know that coax has a certain amount of loss or attenuation. So let's say our coax has a loss of 3 dB. If we input 100 watts from our source, this means that 50 watts will be radiated by our load, assuming that our load is 50 ohms and 50 watts is lost as heat in the coax. So what happens when our SWR is 2 to 1? Since we all know from our previous example that 11% of our power is reflected to the transceiver, and only 50 watts made it to the load, we can calculate that 5.5 watts will be reflected back to the source. But wait, there's still 3 dB of loss in that cable. That means that only 2.75 watts make it back to the source. But the story doesn't stop here with the reflected power making it back to the source. Reflected power is not lost power. Any power that is reflected to the load, again, will eventually be radiated by the load or is lost as heat due to cable loss. Let's go back to our chart again. If we have an SWR of 3 to 1, then 25% of our power is reflected back to the source. If our SWR is 10 to 1, 67% of our power is reflected. So you can see that as the SWR increases, so does the amount of reflected power. One other factor to keep in mind is that as SWR increases, so does the transmission line loss. While this additional loss is typically low, a coax cable with 3 dB of loss and an SWR of 3 to 1 can add an additional 1 dB of loss, while an SWR of 10 to 1 can add an additional 4 dB of loss. This additional loss is dielectric loss because of the higher RF voltage at the standing wave maximum point. You can see this on the chart from the ARRL handbook. With this in mind, let's stick with our prior example with the feedline loss of 3 dB and our SWR at the load of 2 to 1. What is the SWR showing at the radio? Remember that our SWR meter at the radio shows the forward power as 100 watts, but we lost half of our power in the feedline just getting to the load. So the reflected power coming back also lost 3 dB. This will give us a reading on our SWR meter of approximately 1.6 to 1, much lower than the actual SWR of 2 to 1. If the feedline loss was higher, then the SWR would appear even lower. Let's look at this a different way. If we have an SWR meter at the radio end of the coax that shows 2 to 1 and a feedline loss of 3 dB, what is the SWR at the antenna? If we look at this chart, you'll see that the actual SWR is 5:1, much more than our SWR meter is telling us. If we go back to this chart, you'll see that 5:1 shows an additional 1.8 dB of loss, giving you 4.8 dB of total loss. Let's look at this another way. If we take a long piece of RG8X coax, say 100 feet, and terminate it at one end, we would expect that our antenna analyzer would show an infinite SWR, but will it? Let's start at 160 meters and work our way up the bands. On 160, the SWR shows almost infinite, but let's move up a bit. On 40 meters, the SWR is 14:1. On 10 meters, the SWR is 6:1. On 2 meters, the SWR is 3.2:1. Do you see a trend here? The loss in the coax is hiding what the actual SWR is, in this case, infinite. And just for reference, RG8X has approximately 4 dB of loss on 2 meters at 100 feet. The long and the short of it is this. If you have a long cable run with a lossy cable, your SWR measurement can be deceiving. But it's not all gloom and doom. A well-designed antenna system with low-loss coax can perform very well, even if the SWR approaches 2:1. For example, if you build a 40-meter dipole and tune it for resonance at 7150, the SWR will likely be 2:1 at the band edges. But this is still acceptable, and your radio won't care. Even with the 11% of your power reflected back to the radio at the band edges, and assuming you're using good quality coax like DXE213 or DXE400 Max, most of your power will be radiated by your antenna. So the takeaway here is that to really know what's going on, you need to measure your SWR at the antenna. Here are some things to keep in mind that go along with this subject. A resonant dipole is 72 ohms. A resonant vertical is about 36 ohms. A resonant Yagi will be even lower. The point here is that the lowest SWR may not always be 1:1, but your antenna will still be resonant. Reflected power is not lost power. As we discussed earlier, reflected power is reflected back to your transmitter from the antenna, but is then reflected back to the antenna again. And most of the power is eventually radiated, assuming that you have good quality low-loss coax.
Ours is good.
Most monitoring rigs will easily handle an SWR of 2:1 without any damage. Remember, reflected power is not absorbed by your transmitter. A low SWR does not mean that your antenna is radiating efficiently. If the SWR stays low over a large frequency range, something is very wrong. Coax is arguably the most important part of any antenna system. If you cut corners here, your antenna system will suffer. There is no magical length of coax that will make your antenna work better, nor is there a multiple half wavelength that will make your antenna system work better. The best length of coax is what it takes to get the back of your rig to the feed point of your antenna.
Yep.
Buying cheap coax from Amazon, eBay, or a Hamfest just to save $1 is never a good idea. Ask the customer I spoke with recently who just ordered new coax to replace the junk he got from Amazon. Also, coax has a lifespan. This will depend on the quality of the coax you're using. There are also a number of factors that contribute to this, such as UV, water ingress, physical damage from stress, someone stepping on your cable, an animal chewing on it. The list goes on and on. Here's a picture of some coax that I replaced on a friend's tower late last year. This coax is 10 years old. As you can see, it was in really poor condition. So the bottom line here is that it's best to test your coax when it's newly installed, and then periodically to see if there are any changes. Keep a log of your readings, and if there's something that changes, such as the SWR is suddenly lower, there's likely an issue. Also, it's a good idea to do a physical inspection of your cables annually to ensure that there isn't any physical damage or degradation of the cable. There's a lot more on this subject that I could cover in just one video. If you'd like to dig into the subject of SWR further, there are a lot of great resources, including the ARRL Handbook, the ARRL Antenna Handbook, as well as a number of good articles that are available online. I'll put links down in the description. Thanks for watching today. I'm Michael, KI8R, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Let's give Mike a good hand. Now, I want to just touch base with you and see if you paid attention. We're going to have just a little quiz. All right, here's let's see, maybe I'll pick on somebody. What does SWR stand for? Tom?
Standing wave ratio.
Good job. He wasn't sleeping. Besides the transmission line, what other factors affect the performance of an antenna? Ground? The environment? You've got a big pine tree next to your antenna?
It's in a pine tree.
Yeah.
Maple.
If you are transmitting 100 watts and your SWR is 2:1, how much actual power is being transmitted? 89%. Good job. How does dB loss in coax cable affect your SWR reading at your transceiver?
The more loss, the lower your SWR.
The more loss, the lower your SWR. So that reading may not be an accurate reflection of the efficiency of your antenna. What's the ideal length of coax in terms of feeding your antenna?
There isn't any.
Whatever it takes to get from your transceiver to your antenna, that's the ideal. It's an interesting program, but what do you think Mike is trying to sell here?
Coax.
You got it.
DX
Coax. How many of you have inspected your coax lately? How many of you have ever seen little teeth marks on your coax?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bird residue.
And I will say, even though obviously DX Engineering would like to sell you some coax, it does pay to buy the best stuff you can. There's a lot of cheap stuff out there, and it's really lossy. So that's our program for tonight.
Did he show that real small coax that he was using on the antenna there?
Where he showed the example of the bat?
RG8, what is it?
No.
RG8 is the big stuff, and then there's RG8X, and then
8U.
U, and then there's RG58, so forth. Yeah. There's a lot of different ones, but get the best that you can.
Well, the coax that the club sells is from DXN.
Yeah, it's good stuff, so.
That's what I use.
Okay, now, just again, because we're looking for program ideas, you saw how easy that was for me to do it. I'm not an expert on SWR coax. So think about something you're interested in, spend some time on looking at YouTube videos.
That's where you got it?
Yeah, yeah. There are also some ones on the ARRL website. So if there's something you're interested in that you think we might be interested in, step up to the plate, let me know, and it's pretty easy. And I thought it was kind of interesting. All right.
Question for you.
Yes.
As I watched that video, what I was hearing, the audio was that it didn't match up to his mouth.
I think that must be something between here and here, because when I watched it at home, it was
Everything was fine.
Did we ever get the sign up?
It was a little disconcerting, so I just looked away and
Did we
listened.
get the sign up?
Yeah, it was, I was kind of disappointed, but I think somehow it's between here and here, because it
came here.
laptop
I think
alone
it
was
came
Probably the
here.
coax between your.
Probably the coax. I did get this off eBay from a retiree living in Florida who's just selling a little cable on the side to make a little extra because he's having a hard time.
Well, here I've got something to say, Jack and Debbie. Leave that stuff that's in the ground. Don't try to pull it up because it's probably junk. Wait, Debbie, and you don't need to pull up anymore.
When it's being pulled up because we.
How long have you had it in the ground?
Once a couple
20 years or
days.
more. 20 more years or more. I'd say it's junk, Jack. He just told us right there.
It's amazing how quickly I laid some coax from my house about 30 feet out to another antenna, and I just laid it on the ground in the fall, and by midsummer you couldn't see it.
Wow.
It really, the grass grows up over it, and I don't have good grass. Yes?
I was just gonna say, our son is doing gardening in that area, so it needs to be taken
Yeah,
out
you're,
with the tiller.
so you still have to pull them. So don't use it yet. All right, we're ready for our 50-50 drawing. Get your tickets out, please.
Last three digits are 927.
10, all right. All right, well, thank you for coming. We're getting you out a little bit early tonight. If you want to stick around and get to know some of our new people better. Otherwise, we'll see you, many of you, next Tuesday. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
I want to see the blurb.